July 4th, 1944. 4:30 a.m. Under cover of night, 4 American planes of VFN-76, one of the U.S. Navy's first night fighter squadrons, make their way to the island of Chichijima in the Pacific. The 4 Grumman F-6F Hellcats are radar-equipped, a new technology that uses radio waves to detect and track other aircraft in total darkness. Their instrument panels glow in dim red light to preserve night vision. 21-year-old Buck Dungan flies element lead.
The Hellcat was such a stable machine, we all fell in love with it.
Dungan and his wingman, Johnny Deere, split off from their flight lead. They each carry one 500-pound bomb to hit shipping in Futami Cove. The drone of the Hellcat's Pratt & Whitney engines is heard for miles around, alerting the Japanese to the specter of an American attack. Enemy anti-aircraft gunners fire blindly into the night sky. Dungan steers clear of the tracers while using his compass, altimeter, and artificial horizon to navigate, called flying on instruments. Though nighttime combat had occurred as early as World War I, it wasn't until the advent of this sort of advanced instrumentation in the late 1930s that true night fighting and navigation was possible. Soon, Dungan spots a target in the water below, a lightly armored Japanese destroyer escort.
We saw a small ship leaving the harbor, and it had an umbrella of fire above it. So I said, Johnny, let's make a low-side run.
The Hellcats drop to wave-top level for the risky broadside attack. Dungan carefully monitors his altimeter and artificial horizon to avoid hitting the water. The gunners on board the Japanese destroyer have no idea where the night fighters are coming from. Dungan unleashes a torrent of .50 caliber ammunition at the ship.
50 caliber slug is as big around as your thumb, about as long too. At 2,400 rounds per minute from 6 guns meeting at one place, it's going to knock holes in just about anything.
To preserve night vision, the Hellcats don't use tracers.
Even without the tracers, you have a great flash, but you don't look at it. You keep your eyesight way ahead, away from light.
Dungan and Deere pull hard back on their sticks to climb over the top of the destroyer escort.
I said, Johnny, the upstairs is open for us. They're inviting us in. And so we made a high-side run.
Below them, the ship's gunners still have no idea where the Americans are. The Japanese begin firing low, out over the water. Dungan and Deere rake the deck, firing down the smokestack directly into the engines. Flames erupt and smoke belches from the wounded ship. It is dead in the water.
So here, 2 Hellcats with 650 calibers apiece took on a fighting ship that had a lot of armament, and we beat up on it and we sunk it.
Without being detected, the Americans have made quick work of the enemy ship. The Hellcats turn their attention to the island itself. They split up, each patrolling his own sector of sky.
In night fighting, you assign an area because then anyone you see is not friendly, and he's a target.
Suddenly, a shadow passes overhead. It's a Japanese Navy Zero equipped with amphibious floats. American pilots call these planes roofs. The roof pilot can navigate at night on instruments, but he has no radar to see in the dark. Undetected, Dungan closes on his enemy's 6 o'clock.
I knew the fuel was carried in the float, so I aimed on the strut between the float and the cockpit and just touched the trigger, just one little...
The Zero bursts into flame and plummets. The explosion has given away the night fighter's position. Suddenly, tracers rip through the night sky.
I turned and looked, and I had 3 in back of me who were firing at me.
Buck Dungan's top-secret training as a Navy night fighter is about to be put to the test. In 1943, Buck Dungan joined the U.S. Navy's night fighter program, codenamed Project Affirm, based at Quonset Point in Rhode Island. Project Affirm and almost all other night fighter programs utilized a technology that in World War II was only in its infancy: radar. Radar, or radio detection and ranging, uses radio waves to detect objects beyond visual range. Radio energy is transmitted from an antenna. Objects in the sky reflect some of this energy back to a detector, where these radar returns can be processed and used to determine the distance to the target, altitude, and direction of travel.
Next to the atomic bomb, the development and various forms of radar was the #2 priority for both America and the British.
The British used ground-based radar to combat Luftwaffe daylight bombing during the Battle of Britain. As losses mounted, the Germans were forced to fight at night. The RAF needed a new form of radar, something small enough to fit on an individual airplane. This onboard radar would be a fighter pilot's eyes in the dark, allowing him to steal in close to an enemy and make the kill undetected.
The radars were big, bulky pieces of equipment, vacuum tubes, and a lot of heat and needed a lot of power that the airplanes of the day just couldn't deliver. So the British did a lot of the development of these early radars to be able to fit inside still fairly large aircraft, twin engine versus, say, a Spitfire.
This new radar, called Airborne Intercept, allowed night fighters to track individual aircraft in total darkness. The British shared the technology with the U.S. Navy in 1940. By 1942, radar sets could fit on single-engine fighters. Project Affirm, America's first night fighter training program, was born. Now, Project Affirm night fighter Buck Dungan is in the crosshairs of 3 Japanese roofs. But luckily, his wingman, Johnny Deere, is in the area, still undetected by the enemy.
And he said, "Buck, are you all right?" And I said, "I've got some company. I'm having all this fun by myself. I'm going to invite you to the party."
Dungan is here. Deere is here. Dungan plans to lead the enemy fighters directly into his wingman's line of fire. Johnny Deere streaks in, using the Japanese gunfire as an aiming reference against the night sky. Deere has claimed 2 of the roofs, but there's still one left, behind Dungan. Dungan must reverse direction quickly to turn the tables on the remaining roof.
I made a real fast, kill your speed turn, you know, up like that, and pulled around and came in on the fella down here. He just kept coming right at me, and he was firing, and I gave him a short burst. And he blew up.
Dungan and Deere once again split up to search for new targets. Dim pre-dawn light breaks on the horizon. Suddenly, Dungan spots more tracer fire arcing towards him. He's been spotted.
I saw a plane coming toward me about 3 miles away, and his guns were all firing.
The inexperienced Japanese pilot is firing too soon. He runs out of ammo. Dungan carefully puts the pipper on the roof's silhouette and fires. He's made quick work of his opponent. But more roofs are in the air, waiting for the rising sun to light the battlefield.
Then I got involved with a very clever fellow who liked to play tag in the clouds.
Dungan is here. Another roof is here, trying to duck into a cloud bank. Visibility is already next to nothing. Only the most skilled pilot would attempt to dogfight in the clouds at night. But Buck Dungan is confident and very aggressive. He throttles up and chases the Japanese pilot into the abyss. July 4th, 1944. In almost total darkness, Navy night fighter Buck Dungan, in a radar-equipped Hellcat, pursues a Japanese float plane into a cloud deck.
He disappeared in the thick part of the cloud, then came out in the light part. When he came out into visibility, I'd give him a burst, even though I wasn't lined up with him. I'd let him know he's got company.
The Japanese pilot must do something to shake the tenacious American night fighter. He will throw his aircraft into a steep descending spin. He's hoping Dungan will shoot past and lose sight of him in the darkness. The roof pops his nose up and begins the spin. But Dungan is one step ahead of him. He pulls up to keep from overshooting, then quickly throws the Hellcat into a spin of its own.
A spin is an easy thing to do. It's a full back with a stick and right or left rudder, and your nose comes up and you just trail down like this.
The Hellcat spins erratically as the aircraft plummets, but Dungan is in complete control, waiting for the right moment to pull out.
When you want to come out of it, you reverse rudder and push the stick forward, and you'll stop the spin immediately.
The roof pulls out of its spin. Dungan pushes the stick forward slightly and applies right rudder. The Hellcat responds smartly. Dungan swings in on the roof's 6 o'clock.
I could see him landing in a cove quite a distance away, so I elevated my guns and found that, by gosh, if I shot up in the air about 20 degrees, my bullets were landing around him.
With no tracers, Dungan is accounting for the ballistic drop of the rounds and zeroing in on the roof. Slugs land all around the roof as he hits the water and skips. Dungan fires another burst. White-hot, incendiary bullets rip into the fuselage. It's an incredible feat of aerial marksmanship. Dungan streaks past the wreckage and climbs back to altitude. Dawn approaches. The night fight will soon be over. Japanese anti-aircraft guns have opened up again, ignoring the risk of hitting their own aircraft.
I was marking the position of the anti-aircraft battery, and bam! I felt a big explosion. I heard off my left side, and I felt I was hitting the shoulder. And then I turned the mirror down to take a look at me. Now, I've got a ruddy complexion, always did have a ruddy complexion, but the person looking back at me was totally white. And I thought, I don't want to look at that ugly face anymore, so I pushed it up.
Dungan's F-6F has taken the hammer blows of an unseen Rupes 20mm cannon fire. Shrapnel is buried in his left shoulder. His clavicle is shattered. He is in no condition to continue the fight.
Oh, it hurt terribly. So I knew it wasn't too bad. Had it been numb, I would have been worried. But it hurt so much that, oh, God, what I had shrapnel all in my shoulder and the back.
Dungan establishes radio contact with Johnny Deere. Deere's Hellcat has also been hit. Now separated, they head back to the safety of American-controlled waters. At daybreak, Dungan manages to make an emergency landing on the carrier Yorktown. His wounds will end his combat career. The 3 victories on July 4th, 1944 bring his total to 7, making him an ace, a deadly, effective night fighter. The U.S. Navy and Marine Corps focused on single-seat night fighters, embodied in the radar-equipped Hellcat. The Army Air Force opted to develop an entirely new type of airplane, designed specifically for night missions, the Northrop P-61 Black Widow.
P-61 was the only aircraft in World War II designed from the ground up for night fighting, the only one. The RAF and the Luftwaffe wrote the textbook for night interception, and that started in late '38. The P-61 took everything they learned from the RAF and incorporated it into that plane.
Engineers knew a good night fighter needed 3 things: speed, heavy armament, and excellent radar. The P-61 had all 3. It was equipped with twin Pratt & Whitney R2800 engines, giving it a top speed of 365 miles per hour.
Crew of 3, a gunner, a radar observer, and a pilot. 4 20mm and 4 50 calibers. Tremendous firepower.
At the heart of its night fighting mission was the P-61's airborne intercept radar, which operated in a similar fashion to previous night fighters. A rotating antenna in the nose emits long wavelength radio energy called microwaves. This energy is reflected back by any aircraft within 5 miles. These radar returns are then processed by the radar operator and used to track the enemy in total darkness. Experienced night fighter pilot Al Jones flew the P-61 over Europe.
It was a great airplane. It looked kind of clumsy sitting on the ground, but it was very agile and very responsive.
Despite its late arrival in combat, the P-61 became an icon of night fighting. April 1945. A lone P-61 Black Widow, piloted by Al Jones, circles a German airfield, completely unseen. Jones and his radar operator, Lefty Rodofsky, are waiting for enemy night fighters to return to base, called an intruder mission.
We were well within Germany, and the Lancasters were bombing Kassel, which is a city in Germany, and we could see them off to our south.
The Black Widow's radar probes the night sky, searching for prey.
My my radar operator picked up a signal on his set that there was an airplane coming into the airport.
The enemy aircraft is here. Jones is here. Rodofsky will skillfully guide Jones into firing position using only the P-61's radar. Rodofsky uses two scopes to track the German plane. The A scope indicates the range to the target. The B scope tracks its elevation off the nose. He uses this information to relay instructions to the pilot. Rodofsky instructs Jones to turn right. Deep in enemy territory, stealth is their only ally. They must carefully position themselves on the German 6 without being detected. Soon, Jones gets a visual. A German Me-410, a twin-engine fighter often used for night fighting.
We followed him in, and when he was about 300 or 400 feet above the runway, like going in for a landing.
Undetected, Jones closes in and lines up his shot.
All the guns were fixed forward, and we could select them either machine guns only, or cannons only, or all together.
At night, a single burst will reveal his position. Jones carefully centers the pipper on the target. He squeezes the trigger. The German night fighter plunges down in flames. The airfield below erupts with anti-aircraft fire. Al Jones pulls up, opens the throttle, and makes a hasty departure. Amazingly, he arrives back at base unscathed. World War II laid the foundation for night fighting and drove technological innovation. But the struggle to own the night would continue unabated into a new era in aviation. The jet age. Air combat in pitch black conditions at over 500 miles per hour will test American pilots as never before. January 12, 1953. In total darkness, a formation of American B-29 bombers approaches their target at Sinuiju, North Korea, escorted by F-3D Sky Knights of the U.S. Marine Corps. The F-3D is equipped with powerful onboard radar, one of the first jet fighters built specifically for nighttime combat operations.
It achieved the name of Willie the Whale real quick. It looked like a black whale. And the radar operator and the pilot sat side by side. Had a huge fuselage, twin engines, subsonic, but tremendous firepower with 420 millimeters and outstanding radar.
The F-3D's radar covers a 170-degree sweep in front and a 144-degree sweep in back. Marine Major Jack Dunn pilots one of the Sky Knights. Dunn and another F-3D pilot circle the bomber box to maximize the coverage their onboard radar provides. As the B-29s make their drop, the Sky Knight's radar peers into the dark, scanning for threats. Then, ground control crackles over Dunn's radio. MiGs are in the air, but they're not engaging. The B-29s begin their egress. Suddenly, a MiG-15 thunders past. Somehow, the Sky Knight's onboard radar has missed the bandit.
The guy probably came up from an angle beyond the 170 degrees, down. The cone radar did not pick him up.
Dunn's night fighter instincts kick in. He charges after the MiG. Radar operator Larry Fortin begins tracking the target. As Dunn closes the gap, he can't believe his eyes. The MiG has left his wing lights on.
This is not standard operating procedure. Something's wrong. He said, I'm being lured into a trap.
The Marine pilot is aggressive, willing to take the risk to make a kill. He throttles up, continuing to close with the MiG.
It's just the mentality of a Marine fighter pilot. I want to get the MiG, to heck with it, you know, and they took their chance.
Suddenly, blinding light fills the cockpit. Searchlights from below track the F-3D's movement across the sky, and anti-aircraft gunners open up.
He said it just lit up the cockpit like it was noon. It lit them up to where the AAA could get a beat on.
The only way to track the MiG is with the F-3D's onboard radar. Larry Fortin will have to talk Jack Dunn through a dogfight with a MiG-15. The MiG-15 is a fast and agile opponent. The swept-wing jet fighter is armed with two 23mm and one 37mm cannon, an airplane built to climb to altitude and destroy American bombers. The MiG-15 is much faster and is more heavily armed. The Sky Knight's slower speed allows it to turn tighter, but at night, the F-3D's onboard radar is its greatest advantage.
They had a tail warning radar that went out 4 miles. So if a MiG tried to slip in behind an F-3D, the pilot would be alerted way before they got in firing range and could take evasive action. Then they had a lock-on radar for the guns. Once they got locked onto that target, it had a range of 4,000 yards, which is over 2 miles. Then the pilot could take over with the RO's help, close the gap. He'd get a good solution on the radar. The radar would lock the gun zone, fire, and you had a kill.
With searchlights tracking him across the sky, Jack Dunn relies solely on the instructions of his RO, Sergeant Larry Fortin. Anti-aircraft shells burst all over the night sky.
It's been said that being a night fighter is akin to being a police car chasing a bank robber. Except the police car driver is blind and you're having to describe to the driver what the other car is doing, when to turn, when to speed up, when to slow down, and do that all at night.
The jets streak towards the deck. Dunn flies in and out of the searchlights, angling for a shot.
I mean, they're flying in pitch black, and Fortin's saying, you got him, you're closing, you got him, stay with it.
At 700 yards, the F-3D's radar locks on and adjusts the pipper to help Dunn line up an accurate shot. He fires a burst. The MiG is hit, but he stays in the fight. The North Korean pilot pitches down into a screaming dive. Dunn follows, his eye on the altimeter. Somehow he must make the kill and still leave enough time to pull out. The MiG plummets, the Sky Knight in hot pursuit. January 12, 1953. Marine night fighter Jack Dunn dives in pursuit of an enemy MiG-15. Dunn must make the kill, but leave enough time to pull out. His eyes dart between the altimeter and his target.
Dunn already had the momentum. He was within range. Followed him down, 3 short bursts, and the MiG caught on fire.
Lethal 20mm cannon shells arc through the night sky and shred the MiG. Dunn jams the stick in his gut, straining against the pull of G. The night fighter soars skyward, the smoking wreckage of the MiG-15 in his wake. He throttles up and heads for home. His aggressiveness has paid off. He has scored his first kill, one of only 6 made by F-3D crews during the entire Korean War. The Korean War showed that jet combat at night was possible. During the following decades, night and all-weather radar intercept capabilities steadily increased.
Once Korea was over with, the weapons became much more sophisticated. So to make the kill, all you had to do was make sure your weapons were locked on, fired it, and they found the target.
Night and all-weather fighting started to be incorporated into the conventional capability of all fighter aircraft. By Vietnam, the dedicated night fighter was becoming a thing of the past.
The number of aircraft types just kept shrinking and shrinking to now it's gone from 4 or 5 true night fighter types in World War II. Hellcat Corsair, P-61 both fighter. It's dwindled down now where anything flying in the day can do the same thing at night.
In the decades following Vietnam, the United States advanced the tactics and technology of night fighting and beyond visual range combat more than any other nation. No fighter embodies this more than the F-15 Eagle. March 24th, 1999, the first night of Operation Allied Force. The combined air forces of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, descend on Serbia. F-15 Eagles fly MiG-cap for the massive multinational strike force. One of these flights is led by Major Robert Renner, call sign Cricket.
I'd flown combat missions over northern Iraq in 1995, but was honestly thinking, you know, this is going to be a little bit different. It's not just enforcing a no-fly zone where you might occasionally see someone shooting at you, but this is going to be for real.
Flying element lead in the flight of 4 is Lieutenant Colonel Cesar Rodriguez, call sign Rico. He's an experienced F-15 pilot with 2 MiG kills in Desert Storm.
There's only 2 of us who had Desert Storm experience in our squadron. We had a whole new generation of fighter pilots that was more technically proficient, in my opinion, than those of us who fought in Desert Storm, because they were seeing the benefits of a Desert Storm in how the radars were developed and the new weapons were developed.
Shortly after arriving on station, Rico picks up an unknown contact on radar. At any time of the day or night, modern fighter pilots coordinate with airborne warning and control aircraft, called AWACS. The AWACS and F-15 use sophisticated radar and electronics to illuminate the nighttime battlefield. An AWACS on station over northern Italy confirms Rico's contact. A Yugoslav Air Force MiG-29. The MiG-29, designed during the 1980s, is a Mach 2 capable air superiority fighter. It uses both heat-seeking and long-range radar-guided missiles. The 1970s era F-15C Eagle was the first U.S. fighter specifically built for air-to-air combat since the F-86 Sabre. The F-15C's radar can identify and track targets at 90 miles, day or night. Still over 40 miles away, Rico's F-15 locks up the MiG.
It was really what I call a very amazing moment. We're at 30+ thousand feet. We're doing Mach 1.4. We are, as we call, hauling the mail, and I take my shot.
I'll remember this forever. I hear him call Fox 3 over the radio, meaning he's just shot an AMRAAM at this MiG-29. So I'm 20 miles away, and I see the little point light come off his airplane and start going to track the MiG-29.
The AMRAAM is first guided by the F-15. Then, its own active radar in the body of the missile kicks in. The missile makes tiny adjustments as it streaks through the night sky. Seconds later, impact.
I was actually fighting over a piece of ground that was not only mountainous, but covered in snow. So that fireball takes the reflection of the fire, multiplies it by all the mountains around us. If you were to take 2 or 3 football stadiums right next to each other, and then all 3 of the main light switches, you switch them on at the same time, that's what it looked like.
Rico Rodriguez has scored his 3rd MiG kill. It's a stunning demonstration of the dominance of technology in modern night fighting. But there are more MiGs rising to defend their homeland. To the north of Rico and Cricket, another F-15 pilot, Captain Mike Shower, call sign, streaks into battle. He is informed of Rico's engagement over the radio.
We heard through AWACS that there was an engagement in the south, that we got a splash 1 in the south call. It piques your level of attention up a little bit.
Dozer's senses are heightened by the presence of the enemy. He monitors his radar constantly, his only means of peering into the dark abyss that surrounds him. Soon, he will find himself in one of the most intense dogfights of the entire conflict. March 24th, 1999. F-15 Eagle pilot Captain Mike Shower, call sign Dozer, escorts a formation of F-117s to their targets near Belgrade. The stealth fighters are virtually undetectable at night, but they have no air-to-air defense. Dozer and 3 other F-15s are tasked with protecting them. Dozer's radar scans the night sky, searching for any sign of the enemy. Soon, he gets a contact.
I brake lock, look a little bit. About 30 seconds later, now I see it starting to march back down the scope, because initially it was going away from me, so we're kind of chasing it this way, and now it's turned high.
AWACS confirms its identity, a Yugoslav MiG-29. It's headed directly for the strike package. The MiG-29 is at 10 o'clock low and 25 miles away. The F-15 gains radar lock. Dozer fires 2 missiles.
They're called missiles, they miss, not hittles. So, always shoot 2 to up what we call your PK, your probability of kill.
Dozer watches the missiles streak away, but the darkness conceals another aircraft in the middle of the fight, invisible even on radar.
In the meantime, which I didn't know and I found out the next night, there was an F-117 directly between myself and the MiG. Before the war, I asked him, I said, hey, we're going to be above you, depending on where the MiGs are and where you guys are, we may be shooting through you, flying through you. Is that okay? And the weapons officer's like, yeah, it's big sky theory, don't worry, we'll never be close to each other.
The missiles roar past the F-117's cockpit, within feet of knocking the aircraft down.
And all of a sudden, that first missile over the top of his airplane motor burner, and second missile over the top of his airplane, oh, good God. He said he starts doing this, looking, he's like, he's got NVGs on. He's like, I'm in the middle of a doggone shootout right now.
Unaware of how close he's come to knocking down a friendly aircraft, Dozer monitors the missiles.
First missile times out, nothing. And then I'm waiting for the AIM-7. Just as the AIM-7 times out, the target starts to maneuver in a right-hand turn towards the beam. So I'd be looking at him like this.
Dozer is here. The MiG-29, alerted to his presence, is now in a climbing right turn towards him. The F-117 is here. The stealth fighter is undetected in the middle of the dogfight. Dozer banks into a left turn to close with the MiG-29. He uses radar to see in the dark and maneuver against his target. He fires another missile.
The F-117 tells me at that time, about 1,000 feet away from him, he said he looks over, missile goes right in front of him, I fly right in front of him.
With the third missile airborne, the MiG-29 breaks back hard left, directly into Dozer. The Serbian pilot is breaking into the attack, trying to engage Dozer at close range.
So now I'm diving like this. The MiG is in a left-hand turn coming up towards me like that. We're 10,000 feet apart. The, hair in the back of your neck stands up a little bit.
The missile tracks almost straight down, then a burst of flame.
So now like 100 foot of flame or whatever it was, I can see his airplane kind of spiraling with the hit, going downhill. And I continue to kind of do the left-hand turn over the top, watching it, quite honestly, not doing anything tactical, because I'm just going, wow, look at that. Because I've never seen that before.
It is Dozer's first MiG kill. The MiG-29 spirals down in flame towards the ground below. Dozer pulls up out of his turn and starts climbing back to altitude. The victorious F-15 pilot retakes his position above the strike package and continues the patrol. In modern air combat, there is very little difference between night and day. Precision weapons and long-range radar have made the dogfight a long-distance affair. As technology improves, the distance becomes even more remote. The next generation of fighter aircraft, like the F-22 Raptor, adds stealth to the arsenal of the fighter pilot.
I think the future with an F-22 is going to be almost boring, which is good for our side and bad for the enemy.
But technology is never static. Every breakthrough spawns a countermeasure. The quest to command the sky, day and night, will continue long into the future.